I'm breathing underwater. I'm weightless through space. I'm soaring like an eagle all over this place. Creatures most will never see are waiting there to look at me, and all I gotta do is breathe underwater. We begin at Falkenmatt Castle, Switzerland. The name is fictional, of course. I would really like to know what that place actually is, but nobody on the internet seems to want to tell me. Anybody know?
This, my dear Nelson, is the heart and soul of international bionics. Here, the cybernetic organism, the cyborg, is born.
Hello, Professor. Or did you get a bonk on the head in your King Tut today? No, today he's Dr. Tabor Ulrich, a genius in cybernetics who's so in love with eating that carriage is the only way he can move. He's so heavy his legs can't carry him, but he's not concerned. He has his little go-kart and he has his pretty blonde assistant to keep a constant stream of food flowing his way.
Titanium steel. They won't have many broken bones.
Except for the electronic components, they're almost indestructible.
Ulrich is rather proud of his creations, and rightly so. The question in my mind is, why is he showing all this to Admiral Nelson?
Here, the cyborg starts to become human. Its brain, nervous system, memory, sensors are being installed.
How do their mental capacities compare with those of human beings?
The memory unit can store and recall all of the knowledge a man can acquire in a lifetime.
That's Gundi, the pretty blonde assistant. You could get the feeling she was originally here for certain other purposes as well, but in order to do that in his condition, she probably needs a magnifying glass and a pair of tweezers.
Their sensors can give a faster reaction times than man's. They are universally brilliant.
He keeps calling these things cyborgs, but there's a crucial element missing before they're genuine cyborgs: a people. A cyborg, by definition, is a hybrid between a living organism and a machine, like Steve Austin or the Borg Queen. Where are his human subjects volunteering for this?
Stronger in every way than man. They are not a man's equal, Admiral. They are his superiors.
I mean, mechanically superior.
Well, none of them has written a sonnet yet, if that's what you mean.
That's because they're robots, not cyborgs. And if the Admiral isn't a little put off by his smug expression and near-apocalyptic talk, he needs to go back to the Seaview and start this trip over. He forgot to roll a perception check.
Here the cyborg becomes a living thing. Voyage.
Oh, I see. That thing is Dr. Vespasian after Spider-Man dumped whipped cream on him. That makes it human.
Dermoplasm. Living organic tissue.
He's grown actual living skin over the framework. Now, living tissue needs nourishment to go on living, and we'll never get an explanation of how that takes place, but to Ulrich's mind, having some living stuff is enough to make it a cyborg, even though what he really has is a robot with a fancy coat of paint.
This cyborg is a worker. He will serve me here, perhaps help build other cyborgs. He has no identity. He needs none.
So he's a sub-epsilon from Brave New World. He thinks he's building that society where everybody has a ranking and a job, and if you don't like it, that's just too bad. Nelson says this is impressive and a tad scary.
I agree. That's why some of the special purpose cyborgs I have made in the image of man.
Dude, in the mid-60s, pretty much all of us knew a bit about the Bible, so we all get the reference about creating something in your own image. I can't tell if Nelson is getting suspicious, but if he isn't, I'm getting suspicious enough for both of us.
You see?
I see that thing behind him and I recognize it from the time tunnel. It was here first. The time tunnel wouldn't be airing for another year. Irwin Allen was famous for reusing props to save money. Some say he was so tight he squeaked when he walked. I can't speak to that. I don't know. I do know he was very good at reusing items. We saw it all the time in Lost in Space. I didn't realize it until some of you pointed it out, but the inside of the whale's stomach in episode 1 was used in Fantastic Voyage, which Irwin wasn't involved with, so now I'm thinking he probably bought it at a yard sale. The point is, he made the most of the stuff he had. As for this thing, I honestly can't remember if he also used it in Lost in Space or Land of the Giants. Something is tickling the back of my mind, but I can't pull it out. Anybody want to help?
Male and female created he them.
We get it, dude. You want to be Jehovah, the creator god of the Bible, but you want to live like Dionysius, the Greek god of overindulgence. He says sometimes the cyborgs don't come out just right. They get rebellious and don't follow orders. He has a special disposal method for those.
An ultrasonic furnace. When the power is on, the grids direct a continuing series of ultrasonic waves in a crossing paths. When the arms converge, they incinerate anything between them.
That seems a little extreme. Why don't you just take the batteries out? It was the 60s and we were moving well and truly into a throwaway society. Doing that to one of his cyborgs makes it difficult to reuse parts, but recycling isn't a thing yet. And besides, this is an Irwin Allen production. We do everything by explosion. But Ulrich has one other thing he wants to show Nelson.
A computer, only 6 feet across and 5 feet high, yet it has been called the 8th wonder of the world.
In a society where there's one of these in every pocket, this computer doesn't just seem quaint, it feels like a glorified abacus. While I was in one of my 4 colleges around 1973, I took a class in computer programming. To write my programs, I sat down at an IBM Selectric typewriter. This thing had an endless box of paper and it was connected to the actual computer, which was housed in a building on the other side of the campus. When I told it to save a program, the computer stored everything on its local hard drives. Each of those units could hold up to 30 megabytes of data, which was unheard of at the time, and a serious innovation in storage technology. The episode aired in 1965 and is supposed to take place around 1974. Everything fits the time period and the technology available, so his ability to miniaturize a computer to this size is a giant leap forward for computer science. What am I looking at? More important, what is Nelson looking at? In particular, I'm wondering about this thing.
You see, Nelson, so simple an untrained girl can operate it. Yet it contains the knowledge and the wisdom of the ages. Everything man knows from his first recorded thought here at my fingertips.
If Nelson hasn't already figured out that this guy is a megalomaniac with delusions of godhood, he needs more coffee. There's an important question he's not asking. If this thing really has all the wisdom of the ages in it, how did it get there?
And now, my dear Admiral Nelson, I have a favor to ask of you.
Anything within my power.
Oh, it is, Admiral. It is. You see, my memory bank is much like its creator. It also has an insatiable appetite.
His machine wants information, and Nelson's head is full of information. He says 30 seconds in the machine and it's done. All your knowledge is downloaded.
Well, I'm sorry, but this is one Swiss bank I don't think I want to make a deposit in.
That's very good, Nelson. That's very good. But I do wish you'd reconsider.
No, not a chance.
His head is full of more classified information than Ulrich can count on his chins. He can't let anyone get their hands on that, but he is not listening to Ulrich.
Because whether you volunteer or not, I intend to bleed your mind into the memory bank.
I told him he wasn't listening. Remember this thing? That's what it's for. He has his drones tie Nelson onto it, and soon he's downloaded everything in the Admiral's mind into the computer. Now we have the answer to our question, how does the knowledge get in there? Answer, he steals it. But it's worse than that. He's created a perfect copy of Nelson with all the Admiral's memories, quirks, everything to make him seem like the real thing. Nelson just stands there screaming, Ulrich, over and over as if it's going to do something. It's just like when you're calling your dog and you just stand there and say its name over and over and over. After about the third time, you know what the dog hears? Ulrich is the same way. Don't repeat his name, say something.
Welcome back, Admiral Nelson. I hope you're not feeling too bad, Woundy.
What is it?
A simple restorative. Drink it, you feel much better.
I don't want it.
No, I'm not gonna drink my milk and you can't make me. The big question in all this is, why?
The Seaview has an important role to play in a plan that will reshape man's very future on this planet. Seaview will give me the firepower I need to force the world to accept the only thing that can save it. One absolute government.
That one government run by his cyborgs, of course, with his own impressive presence advising them.
Admiral, as a scientist, you must be aware that man is basically incapable of self-government. He is weak, emotional, hysterical. If this planet is to survive, it must be governed by unemotional superior beings.
That's precisely what humanity doesn't need. Our emotions are a big part of what makes us human. Our capacity to care for each other, to love and be loved, these are the greatest things in life. He thinks they're handicaps. Now, maybe if he got out of this castle once in a while, he might be able to find love too, but he seems to think if he can't get a girlfriend, nobody should.
They will run the world.
It will be their government.
Run by you.
Guided by me. There is no other course of action open to me, Nelson.
There are lots of other courses. Get a hobby like wheelchair basketball. Put your computer to work solving world hunger. Get off your dead butt and get a life. But as we all know by now, he's crazy.
I am the one man on Earth capable of saving this planet from destroying itself. It is my duty, and I must not fail.
And who appointed him humankind's savior? Who told him this was a good idea? Do it. Answer, probably the voices in his head. The bad part is he has the knowledge and the money to make it happen whether humanity wants him to save us or not. He really does think he's God. Now, Admiral Kirk asked a good question. Why does God need a starship? Our question here is similar. Why does God need a powered shopping cart? Victor Buono is scaring the caca out of me. I believe everything he's saying. To this channel, he will always be King Tut, but we've seen him in various roles, both silly and serious. The bio that someone wrote for IMDb says, a good portion of the work of actor Victor Buono was squandered on hokey villainy on both film and television. That person has no idea what they are griping about. He played those kinds of parts because he was good at them. He was an equal cut-up and goofball in real life, so roles like King Tut were perfect for him. But look at this guy. Look at his eyes and tremble. He's fine dropping a nuke on your head if it suits his noble deific purposes. And no matter how much you tell yourself it's just acting, we all know the truth. This is hardly just acting. This is terrifying. The fake Nelson is in the flying sub, heading back to port.
Flying sub to Nelson Institute. Flying sub, Nelson Institute.
Welcome home, Admiral. We read you loud and clear.
I'm at 20,000 feet, Patricia. You're getting the lead down. I'll make a penetration approach over the ocean.
Roger, FS1. Use the south heliport. No other traffic in the area. Captain Crane's waiting for you aboard Seaview.
I'll be right there.
Patricia, or Tisha she's known, is Nelson's radio person at the Institute.
We'll be ready to put to sea tomorrow morning.
It's not easy, but it's possible.
Well, while I was in Switzerland, I had a call from our ambassador to the Zurich Peace Conference. It doesn't look very good there.
How bad?
He said it was a large powder keg with a short fuse burning fast.
Eventually, we'll learn that the opposite is true, but this story is necessary for Ulrich's plan.
Well, that's strange. Every report we've seen calls the conference a great success.
We'll continue to do so right up to the very end. Nobody wants to make the first move, but everybody's preparing.
The implication? We also need to prepare because it looks like the big one is coming.
Oh, by the way, speaking of Switzerland, how is international bionics?
Fabulous. You know, Ulrich is probably the greatest genius in the world today, and he's a fascinating man to boot.
Tell me, is he really as fat as they say?
No, he's fatter.
Well, wouldn't you build a little self-praise into your creations? Gods are supposed to be worshipped after all. Oh, and that cool new computer? He brought it with him.
You should see this computer. It's about the size of my desk, and yet it'll completely automate more than 7,000 operational procedures. It's fantastic.
Your new toy will be waiting for you.
Once the computer takes control of the Seaview, everybody will have an easier job. It does just about everything but cook.
Now, with the Seaview safely at sea, I can send my ultimatum to the rulers of the world's great powers.
If they don't capitulate in 36 hours, he'll fire some missiles and destroy 3 major cities. Nelson says, the moment you send your message, they'll contact the Seaview. Ulrich says, yeah, so?
My dear Nelson, that computer your cyborg installed in the Seaview is a complete environmental simulator. From the moment it was activated, Seaview has been cut off from the rest of the world.
He has the ability to generate radio news reports, conversations, orders from Washington, whatever he wants them to believe. His computer will make it happen.
Crew will believe they are in touch. But actually, every radio transmission, every bit of data and information they receive comes directly from my communication center deep in the base of this mountain.
And if Nelson thinks the sub's fail-safe systems will prevent a launch, well, the guy who designed those fail-safes was in this machine some time back, and Ulrich knows how to defeat them. It seems he's covered everything.
Gundy. Gundy, we must stop him. Will you help me?
I do not know how to help you.
It's pretty obvious that Gundy is also one of his cyborgs. She's starting to be one of the rebellious ones, but she's not there yet.
Could I have something to eat?
Ulrich seems to have spent a lot of time in the Bible. Around AD 60 or so, St. Paul found himself in a similar situation, chained to a prison guard 24/7. But where Nelson is fighting it, Paul, ever the preacher, said, "Hey, check this out. Dude, let me tell you about Jesus. And you might as well listen because you're a captive audience."
You been here very long?
Yeah, I've been here for a long time.
You speak so seldom, it's hard to know what you're thinking.
Ulrich talked about how some of his cyborgs started developing glitches and don't follow orders anymore. I think Gundi is one of them. Naive Nelson still thinks she's another human who might be sympathetic to his situation, and I'm having trouble believing it. He heard what Ulrich thinks of humanity. Does he really suppose that guy would have another human as his companion when he can have one of his perfect creations instead?
I thought you might be interested in what's going on. The so-called rulers of the world have once again demonstrated their infallible inability to grasp the basic realities of any situation.
Meaning they told you to go,
I don't know what he expected. He talks about the perfect governmental system, but the Americans and the Soviets both think they already have that, so what do they need him for?
Well, their ridiculous posture only makes me even more certain that power must be taken from the hands of these incompetents as soon as possible.
He almost said the quiet part out loud. And how does them telling him to go jump mean they're incompetent? Because he's obviously the superior one, so if they can't see that, they must not be fit to lead.
The President of the United States has dispatched a special air-sea convoy to find and sink Seaview. The other nations are responding in the same ridiculous manner.
Admiral Nelson told him that's what would happen, and apparently he didn't believe the guy who is most in the know about such things. Your superior overlord, folks. Without warning or explanation, the Seaview is suddenly dodging depth charges.
Sparks, put me through to comm sub pack. Emergency.
Aye, aye, sir. Seaview to comm sub pack. 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 Seaview, this is comm sub pack. We read you loud and clear. Go ahead.
They have no idea they're not talking to headquarters.
The 1976 Zurich Peace Conference failed 18 hours ago. We're expecting a preemptive attack on the continental United States at any moment. Proceed to your missile launch coordinates and prepare for a retaliatory strike.
The surface ships are still attacking, but the Seaview is tough and versatile enough that she'll eventually outrun them. Their launch coordinates are in the Arctic, so once they get into the ice pack and various flows, there's no way anybody will be able to detect them. Why do they always manage to let the other guy know what they're doing? Just plunge the knife into the back of its neck while it's not looking, Brilliance Incorporated. Nelson won that one, no matter how hard he tried to lose it. The keys to the chain are around its neck. All right, we're around its neck. This grammar checker is kind of aggressive. Up to this point, that one's job was to open and close the door. Nothing else. The stuff going on in that cage is the key to everything. That's where the Nelson robot is controlled from. Ulrich makes those sonic things into a nice little cell for the real Nelson.
I think you will agree, Admiral, that by the time your crew reaches their launch coordinates, they will believe they are at war. Indeed, they will be begging to launch Seaview's missiles.
My crew will never launch those missiles, Ulrich. Even if your cyborg orders them to, they can't. And they won't.
We hope he's right, but at the moment they're on their way to see if he is.
Sparks, pipe stateside broadcasting into the control room.
Aye, aye, sir. This is WJBT Boston signing off. Tune to your emergency frequencies for further instructions.
I'm picking up Radio Moscow, sir.
Это критическое положение. Это критическое положение.
Moscow is telling people to get to fallout shelters because they're expecting an attack. The men haven't noticed that all these voices sound alike. That's because they're all the same guy. His name was Fred Crane, and he was best known for his role in Gone with the Wind as Stuart Tarleton, suitor to Scarlett O'Hara, and twin brother of Brent Tarleton, played by Superman himself, George Reeves. He didn't do that much acting. He spent several years as an announcer on a classical music station in Los Angeles. Later, he and his wife bought a Civil War-era mansion in Georgia and turned it into a B&B. And either he spoke several languages or he was really good at faking it. That Russian sounds as authentic as I've heard.
They just don't believe it. They just don't really believe it. It's not possible.
It's not possible, but it's already the second time they've been in this position. The next question? What the heck do you do with a pistol in a submarine?
I'm gonna get Tish on the video phone.
Tish? Tish.
Activate the affirmative reset.
Tish Sweetley is your radio operator.
Ulrich's downloader doesn't work right. It missed the fact that he calls her Tish rather than Patricia or Miss Sweetley. Yes, that's her last name. Better check some of those circuits, oh almighty one.
Tish, what's happening back there?
Lee, it's horrible. Absolute chaos. Everyone's trying to leave the city, but there just isn't time. It's the end of everything.
Why haven't you gone to the shelter?
I was going, but
Tish, get to the shelter now.
By the way, that's another cyborg they're talking to. That one isn't voiced by Fred Crane.
Fail-safe officers, man your units. Fail-safe officers,
Fail-safe
man your
officers,
units.
man your units.
Fail-safe officers, man your units.
We saw this process in the first season. In a remarkable stroke of continuity, it's exactly the same this time. You know what would turn this plan belly up? If Crane decides he doesn't want a computer driving his sub for the final time and disconnects it. That's one of those things you'd love to see.
We're 15 minutes from our launch site, Admiral.
Very well. I'll give the missile guidance system a final check.
His final check involves redirecting the first 3 missiles to Moscow, Washington, and Beijing. Except they call it Peking. I grew up calling it that and hearing everyone else call it that. Then suddenly one day it was Beijing, and I really felt like a boomer.
Speaking to you from the provisional capital outside Washington, our country has suffered a devastating and unprovoked attack. I urge any of our fighting men who can hear my voice to strike back at the heart of the enemy's homeland with all the might at your command.
Why? What good will it do? Revenge? That's not what people need after something like a nuclear attack. Redirect those efforts into saving the people who are left. Hitting Johnny back doesn't help deal with your own injuries. It just makes two guys with injuries instead of one. Pointless.
15 million people will be killed in those three cities.
An unfortunate but necessary sacrifice.
They're always eager to sacrifice somebody else. You never hear them suggest sacrificing themselves. But you wouldn't expect God to sacrifice himself now, would you? Even though that's exactly what Jesus did. Our Buddha wannabe didn't read that part.
Start firing procedures, Lee. Missiles 1, 2, and 3.
What about 4?
Keep it on ready.
Why? Let's give them all we've got.
Number 4 has a 10,000 megaton cobalt warhead. I'm holding it in reserve.
Pardon me, but 10,000 megatons would blow the planet apart. The biggest nuclear bomb so far is the Tsar Bomba built by the Soviet Union. They detonated it up north in the region of Novaya Zemlya, and it was in the neighborhood of 50 megatons. As for the cobalt part, I've talked about that before. The cobalt bomb is a theoretical way to spread deadly radiation all over the place, and thankfully, nobody's actually built one.
If the world leaders do not surrender within 1 hour after that, the remaining missile will be launched. And its target is such that the prevailing winds will rain 600 engines of fallout onto every city in the northern hemisphere.
That will kill half the world's population and plunge the rest back into the Dark Ages.
There will be survivors, millions of them, and they will receive the cyborg as the savior who will lead them out of chaos into the new world of peace and plenty.
Nelson is pretty much begging him to stop this. If he can't radio Crane, have the cyborg stop it. Ulrich says, I can't do that. He's a free-thinking individual. I can't change his mind. Nelson says there must be a way.
Only if I were to kill him.
All right, kill him!
That would be murder.
Killing millions of people is your way of achieving peace, but killing one of your cyborgs is murder. It doesn't make sense, Ulrich!
Who says an overweight god with a strange accent has to make sense?
I thought a scientist of your brilliance might be able to see things as I do. But you're no different than common man, illogical, sentimental. There will be no place for you in my new world.
Dude, you say that like it's a bad thing.
Goodbye, Admiral. Only come away from there.
Gundi is hesitating, but she can't break loose from Ulrich's orders. As he suspected, when those things fire, they take a moment to recharge. Ulrich can't do anything to him, and Gundi still can't break free from her programming. But Nelson knows where the cyborg is controlled from, and now he knows how to get in there. Who knew all he had to do was knock? Suddenly on the Seaview, Admiral Nelson's hand seems to be going wonky, at least until Captain Crane realizes it's tapping out Morse code.
Abort firing. Kill Nelson.
Tell me, Admiral, what is it? Why should we stop the firing? I have no answer to that question.
I'm gonna abort the firing.
Maybe he should have done the other thing first.
Orders are to fire on Peiping, Moscow, and Washington.
Washington.
If he points that the right direction, it won't matter because he'll destroy all the controls, even though so far neither of them has hit a blasted thing. The launch is aborted. Let's check on the Admiral and maybe we can figure out why he flipped out like that. Gentlemen, I think you have your answer. Ulrich is trying desperately to get to his feet, or anywhere else. Ulrich told him before that if he had destroyed the computer, it would only have been a minor setback. Looks like he was lying. Big shock, I know. Speaking of big shocks, no, he still hadn't figured it out. I suspect he was hoping to take her out on the town once he got out of this. Now he's thinking, that would have been weird. I think we were all wondering how Nelson was going to make sure this guy didn't come back in a future episode. The world will never know any of this, and everybody's fine with that.
Ulrich gave his cyborgs all the strengths of man without realizing that they are oftentimes his weaknesses as well.
That would explain why your cyborg never ate anything. Ulrich must have considered appetite a weakness.
I honestly nearly fell out of my chair laughing when I heard that. If he did consider it a weakness, it was one he wanted to keep all for himself. But there's a more practical reason why the robot never ate. Once the food got past its mouth, where would it go? I'm breathing underwater. I'm weightless through space. I'm soaring like an eagle all over this place. Creatures most will never see are waiting there to look at me, and all I gotta do is breathe underwater. Robot with a fancy coat be airing for first. Come on, David. Have a girlfriend. Can't get goo goo. No, this is never hear them both Siri and Silius. Yes.